I loved that house until the moment everything changed. From the moment I first saw it, I was captivated. Nestled at the end of a quiet street, the house was a grand old Victorian with ivy crawling up its weathered brick walls and tall windows framed by peeling white shutters. The front porch sagged just enough to tell stories of decades of rain and sun, of countless seasons that had come and gone. The faded blue paint on the door reminded me of forgotten summers. Stepping inside, I was greeted by the scent of aged wood mingled with something I couldn't quite place, a faint, sweet aroma, like old flowers pressed between pages. The polished hardwood floors creaked underfoot, not with annoyance but with a kind of whispered welcome. Sunlight spilled through the tall bay windows in the living room, illuminating dust particles that floated lazily in the warm air. I spent the first few days slowly unpacking and exploring. The rooms were large, high-ceilinged, filled with antique fixtures that suggested a once glorious past. In the study, heavy velvet curtains blocked out the afternoon glare, making it the perfect place to write. The kitchen had a massive cast iron stove, which looked both imposing and inviting. At night, when the house settled, it felt peaceful. I'd sit by the fireplace, a soft crackling filling the silence, and watch shadows dance on the walls. I imagined quiet evenings, the kind where nothing but the ticking of the old clock would break the calm. But then, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. The first time, I was cooking dinner when I heard a faint tapping at the kitchen window. I wiped my hands on my pants and walked over, expecting to see a branch or a stray bird. But the glass was clear, reflecting the empty yard outside, dimly lit by the street lamp. The tapping came again, rhythmic, slow, like fingers drumming softly. I blinked hard, but no one was there. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to tell myself it was the wind. Old houses make noises. Maybe a tree branch brushed the glass. But the tapping didn't stop. It got louder, faster, more urgent. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought I heard footsteps, light, careful steps, crossing the floor above me. But the house was empty. The only sound was my own breathing, uneven and quick. Sleep didn't come easy after that. The house's quiet comfort began to crumble, revealing something dark beneath the surface. Lights flickered unpredictably, plunging rooms into sudden darkness before sputtering back to life. I found myself hesitating to walk down the hallways at night, sensing something watching just beyond my vision. Shadows moved unnaturally, stretching and twisting in ways no light should allow. One evening, I sat reading in the living room when the chandelier overhead began to sway violently. No breeze stirred the air, the windows were shut tight. I froze, heart pounding, and watched as the glass crystals tinkled softly, casting fractured light across the ceiling. Then came the whispers. At first, they were barely audible, like the rustling of leaves. But night after night, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They weren't in any language I recognized, a strange, broken cadence that scraped against my sanity. One night, I woke to find my bedroom door slowly creaking open on its own. I sat up, frozen in the dark. A cold draft brushed my skin, and that same whisper curled through the room, brushing past me like a breath. "Leave," it seemed to say. I scrambled to close the door, locking it tight. But the voice followed me, relentless. During the day, the disturbances persisted. A book I'd placed on a shelf would be found face down on the floor. A framed photograph of the house's original owner was turned backwards on the mantelpiece. I found muddy footprints near the back door, small and slender, the print of a child's shoe, even though no one else lived there and the door was locked. Everywhere I looked, I found reminders that I was not alone. The sense of dread thickened. I caught glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, fleeting shadows that vanished when I turned toward them. The air sometimes dropped sharply in temperature, frosting the breath in front of me. I felt like the house was breathing around me, alive and watching, waiting for something. I needed answers. I drove to the local library and dove into the archives, desperate to understand what I had walked into. What I discovered was unsettling. The house had once belonged to a man named Edgar Crowley, a recluse who vanished without explanation half a century ago. The townspeople whispered that he was obsessed with dark rituals, seeking to communicate with the dead. His journals spoke of opening doors to other realms, of voices that promised power but brought madness. Some said Edgar had broken a pact, that he tore a rift between worlds that never truly closed. That night, the house seemed to turn against me. From somewhere inside the walls came a scratching sound, slow and deliberate, like claws dragged across the plaster. It echoed through the rooms, deep and hollow. My skin prickled as a voice, soft, hollow, and chilling, whispered my name over and over, a cold promise wrapping around me. Paralyzed with fear, I barely dared to breathe. Suddenly, the lights in the bedroom exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging me into chaotic darkness. The door slammed shut behind me, locking me inside. Trapped, I pounded on the door, shouting until my voice cracked. The shadows closed in, pressing cold, invisible hands against my skin, choking out my breath. I prayed for dawn. When morning finally broke, I stumbled out of the room, shaken and raw. But the house was not done with me yet. I knew I had to face the darkness head-on. In the attic, I'd found an old silver cross, tarnished but still gleaming faintly. With it in my hand and a flashlight in the other, I descended into the basement, the heart of the house's secret. The air grew icy with every step. My breath hung heavy in the gloom. Damp stone walls closed around me, slick with moisture and age. The beam of my flashlight danced over ancient cracks and strange symbols scratched into the floorboards. From the shadows, a figure emerged, pale, gaunt, and hollow-eyed. His smile was a fractured rift, twisted and cruel. His voice rasped like dry leaves scraping on stone. "Why are you here?" he hissed. I demanded to know what he wanted, my voice shaking but defiant. He told me of broken promises and trapped souls, of a curse that fed on the fear of those foolish enough to stay. The room seemed to close in, darkness pressing like a living thing. Invisible hands gripped my throat, squeezing the air from my lungs. My vision blurred. Summoning all my strength, I held up the cross and shouted a prayer. The figure screamed, an unearthly sound that shattered the silence and vanished into nothingness. I ran, never looking back. Even now, when the wind stirs the trees outside, I swear I hear that whisper, my name, carried on the cold night air, reminding me that some houses are never truly empty, and some loves come with a price far too high to pay.